Work management platforms. Ugh, endless onboarding, IT bottlenecks, admin requests. But what if things were different?
We found love in an open space.
Monday.com is different. No lengthy onboarding. Beautiful reports in minutes. Custom workflows you can build on your own. Easy to use prompt-free AI. Turns out you can love a work management platform. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/ARTS. Just go to Indeed.com/ARTS right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee. I remember when my marriage ended, which was in 1997. But I do remember that when we separated, I did not want the newspapers to know, and managed to keep that the way it was for 3 months. I don't know whether it was just shame or fear of the headlines or whatever. I also firmly believed that I would never work again in RTE.
Hello and welcome to this very special episode of Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations. I'm Mary McAleese, and today we're going to do something a wee bit different, frankly something I'm looking forward to, because over the course of this series, my co-presenter Mary Kennedy and I have shared great conversations with fantastic people. But today I get a chance to interview the woman who's been sitting beside me, nodding wisely, keeping me in my best behaviour. So yes, Mary Kennedy, today it is you in the hot seat. Mary is, as everybody knows, a broadcasting legend, a very beloved household name, somebody who could charm the socks off a room full of statues. She's spent her life bringing stories to life with grace, empathy for which she is acknowledged everywhere, and a knack for always just asking the right question, or at least knowing when to let the silence do the talking. But don't be fooled. Behind that lovely, warm, genuine exterior, there's a woman with plenty of tales to tell, and maybe even a few secrets. Hoping to get a few of those out of you now, Mary. So join me as we peel back the layers of one of Ireland's most cherished voices, and indeed one of my most cherished friends. This is going to be good fun, Mary. It is not Guantanamo Bay, okay?
It feels like Mary Kennedy, this is your life.
Exactly. A bit like that. Yeah, a bit like that. So let's start at the beginning. Let's do it in the linear way. Go right back to your early life and education. You're a dub.
I am. I'm the eldest of four. My mother and father were from around Dublin 7, around the cattle markets. And they got married. He went to Brunswick Street. She went to Stanhope Street. They both left school early because they,
that's what it was.
You had to pay beyond a certain point. And they both got jobs. They got married in Lochran Street Church, and they bought a house in Clondalkin, which was a very, very new greenfield site. Their parents thought they were moving to the sticks. But the lovely thing about this, it was just a new parish, a new community. But the lovely thing about it was that my mother and her sister had a double wedding, and they got married together. They then separated and went in opposite directions around the country on honeymoon. They did meet up at one point, but then they bought houses side by side. And the first thing they did, they were semi-detached houses, was build a stile in the back garden, so we could go from one house to the other, you know, and it was good because, like, when everybody was getting a television, we got 2 televisions because there was one in my house and there was one in Auntie Eilish's house. And on a Saturday night, it was perfect because, you know, all the women and the girls would be in one house watching the Late Late Show because it was on Saturday night then. And then the dads and a couple of the male neighbours would be in watching Match of the Day. So it was choice of viewing. It was just lovely. It was a very ordinary Catholic upbringing. With a
very, very religious household.
My mother was. Yes. She was very, very observant. And it's funny, she was really religious, and Uncle Tom next door was really religious. Can't say the same about my dad or Auntie Eilish. They were fine. They'd go to Mass. But Mommy and Uncle Tom used to go to 7 o'clock Mass every morning. Her ritual was to come down, light the fire, put on the porridge, go out to Mass and come back. But we said the rosary every night after tea. I know. She would say we would do anything to distract her, particularly in
every
the summer.
house, every Catholic house in Ireland was the same story.
And, you know, we would...
You'd wish for appendicitis, wouldn't you?
You would just do anything to distract her. Oh, look! The boys are coming in from next door. And then you would just wait for the moment and there would be a little gap in the conversation and she'd say, Tom, hand me down the beads. We all had to assume our positions. And then my brother John, whom you've met and who's next to me, I'm the eldest, he would do anything. He spent the 15 minutes trying to distract people, trying to make them laugh, trying to get them into trouble. To the extent that when he was older, he used to crawl up and turn the light off and we'd be doing it in the dark and Mommy would get very annoyed. But that was it. It was a lovely place to grow up. It was... I went to the local primary school, which was run by the Presentation Sisters, and went on then to the secondary school, which was Coláiste sa Bríde, where I actually ended up coming back to teach.
But you're a great Gaeilgeoir. Was there much Irish in your house?
Well, no, there was none. But I have to say, in fairness to my mother, she went and took evening classes in Clondalkin, which were organised by Gaelin, and so that she could help us with our homework. I also had a very, very wonderful Irish teacher in secondary school. Joan Redmond was her name. She was actually the sister of John Coonahan, who was a professor of education in Maynooth University. And she really instilled a love of Irish into us in her class. In 5th year, she actually organised for us to go down to the Gaeltacht, to Muriach, in the Kerry Gaeltacht. And I just fell in love with the place. I fell in love with the language. I fell in love with the countryside. I fell in love with the family that we were staying with. And it just stuck. It really did. But when I look back on it now, we were, there was about 7 of us that she sent down. 7 of us. And we just went down. I don't think as a parent I would have that kind of ability to just hand over my children. But they were very safe times. They were very different times.
Different times, for sure. Tell me about, you just mentioned there that your mommy and daddy both left school early because they grew up at a time when there was no free second level education. If you wanted a good second, or indeed, God forbid, a third level education, you had to have money in your pocket and money in the bank. It was really for an elite in many ways.
It was, yeah.
So the big transition, because you went to college, you went to university.
Well, as it happens, the legislation which came in, Donogh O'Malley was the Minister for Education who brought in the free secondary education, just coincided when I was going into secondary school. Because I can tell you, it would have been a kind of a secondary top situation where you could kind of keep going until intercert. But it would have been leave your school after that and get a job. That was the way it was going to be. But thankfully, the free education came in. And the only way I got to college was by really studying very hard. I was an absolute nerd. But the other thing was by getting a county council scholarship.
That's how you got to university.
Yeah, because there were fees in those days. But yeah, I drove my dad used to love watching the television in the evening, and it would be the dining room, then my bedroom was above it, and I used to go study. I mean, I could study for 6 hours. It was madness. But I would always have, a stick beside me, and if you could hear even titter from the dining room, I used to bang on the floor.
They must have loved you down below.
And Daddy used to say, "Oh, here she goes again." She just go to bed. Yeah.
But they must have been so proud of the fact that you did do well in second level, you did go on to third level. things that they could never have aspired to for themselves.
No, they couldn't have aspired to it. I've no doubt they were, but I can remember people would say, maybe at the time I did the Eurovision, people would say to my mother, you must be very proud. And her stock answer, and it's probably true of every mother in the land, I'm proud of all my children. That was the way. But it would have been. I mean, they were at a stage where my mother's brother, for instance, Uncle Christy, he got married. And on the same day, he left, I think it was 1951, he left for Canada. He reared a family.
Yes, there you go. A lot of people did at that time.
And he didn't come home until 1967, which was 16 years later. And I remember every photograph of them when they came home for that visit in the summer. They came home for about 4 weeks and brought their 3 children. First time we'd ever met our first cousins. Every photograph, my grandmother, who was Christy's mother, is sitting beside him in the photograph in the front row, and she's holding his hand. And that was the way. And she was distraught when he went back.
And probably distraught too when he went away in 51,
for
because
sure.
she would probably not have she may have wondered, would she be still alive the next time time he'd come back to Ireland?
Yeah.
In those days when you went, you were going for good.
Yeah. They did go for good. And it was difficult over there. He ended up with 2 jobs to kind of put his own children through education, because things were expensive over there. No, you're right. I was looking at it really from the point of view of when he returned, the joy and the sadness then when he went home again. But it must have been so hard in 1951 when he left. It must have been very hard for him and for his wife as well. They were in the same situation.
You had the auntie next door. He had probably nobody.
No.
Just living among strangers and forever.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. That's a tough story, because it's every house in Ireland knows a story like that, don't they? We've all got those. Then you graduate from UCD. You become a teacher.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And what were you teaching? Where were you teaching?
I was teaching back in my old school in Coláiste Breda in Clondalkin. I was teaching Irish and French and religion. But in that state,
and were you permanent and pensionable there?
I was, yeah. But I can remember I did my HDip, and then I went to teach English in France for a year.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I went to the
whereabouts?
In Rennes in Brittany, and I was in it was the university, and I was teaching students who were taking Anglo-Irish as a master's subject, and it was great. You could teach them all about the poetry and the stories and all of that sort of stuff. And while I was there, my father died. And I had intended, because I was sharing an apartment with a lovely Scottish girl who's still a friend, Jill, and she had made plans to stay on for the second year, and I was going to do that too. But just at Easter, it was Holy Week, my father was on a golf outing from work. He worked for the New Ireland Assurance Company, and he was on a golf outing and he died of a heart attack.
Suddenly?
Just playing golf, and then he was gone. It was obviously pre-defibrillator times. And
how old was he?
He was 59.
Oh, dear.
And I was the eldest. I was 21. That was the end of March. That June, my sister Deirdre did her leaving cert, and my brother Tony did his intercert, as it was at the time. And it was an absolutely devastating time. And I came home for the funeral. The only memories I have are of tears, darkness and cold and wet. And they didn't tell me, because I had to make that journey from Rennes. They told me, my Uncle Tom, who lived next door, he phoned and he said, we want to come home, your dad has taken a turn. Now, I said, oh gosh, must come quickly. But it's funny, I suppose it's the wisdom of older age. I left early in the morning from Rennes to get the train to get to Paris and to go on standby. And I was on my way, struggling with my suitcase to the train station about 6 o'clock in the morning, and a car stopped, and it was an English couple. They were over because it was Easter and they were going on holidays touring around Brittany. And I got in to the back of the car. I'd never met them before, and I told them that my dad was playing golf and he'd had a turn and I'd been told to come home. And them being older, I think they must have known in their hearts that it's probably not a turn.
It's not going to be a good story when you get home.
So what they did was, I said, you just leave me here at the station. I went to get my ticket at the station, and they came in after me. And they stayed until I got on the train.
You've been lucky
Isn't
all
that
your
incredible?
life to meet those kind of people.
I think that's really, really kind, isn't it?
Isn't it?
Yeah.
The kindness,
they just
and
saw what was
the
going on.
nurturing
Yeah.
from strangers, particularly at that moment, because it probably was going through your head too.
It wasn't.
That you didn't know that.
It just didn't enter into my consciousness. But I can tell you, when I arrived in Dublin Airport and came into the arrivals hall, you know the way the double doors just open automatically, and I saw a friend, some family members, not my mother, my uncle, my dad's brother, who was my godfather, in the foyer there. I just crumbled. They told me I just crumbled, and that I screamed, but I had no. Maybe it was subconsciously there, but it was a very, very sad. I absolutely adored my father. And then when I went back to Brittany after the funeral and the 2 weeks holidays for Easter, my father was a great letter writer. And there was a letter for me waiting in the apartment that he had written just around Patrick's Day.
Was there any hint in that letter that he had intimations this could be the last letter?
Absolutely no way. It was the normal chit-chat about what was going on the road, the kids, what they were doing, what Mummy was doing. I still have it. But no, it was just total chit-chat. And I would, we had a thing going. I would write, he'd reply. I'd write, he'd reply all the time. But it's treasured. It's a treasured possession, I can tell you now,
Death was just
Mary.
an ambush.
Yeah. For him, for everybody.
For everybody.
Yeah.
And that was a big change in your life. So when you come back from Brittany, then you're into a career as a teacher, presumably?
Yeah.
And then tell me about that and that career that morphs then into broadcasting. How does all that happen?
It's funny because I applied. There was a job going, and I had to get a job. It was lovely. I got the job, met with a really nice group of women with whom I'm still friendly, even though they're well retired, and so am I from teaching. But I don't know, there was always something. I think while I was in college, I always worked, because I had to supplement the scholarship, and I always worked, and I said, with absolute respect to all secondary school teachers who work really hard, I said to myself, well, what am I going to do, when I'm not at school and during the holidays? So a year after I started teaching, there was an ad in the paper for part-time continuity announcers in RTE. Imagine an ad in the paper. Can you imagine that now?
Yeah, it would never happen.
So I applied, and I remember it was funny because I told nobody. Because I felt that people would say, you're from Clondalkin, who do you think you are?
You have
out
notions.
To Donnybrook, you have notions. So I told nobody. I said, I should just try it anyway. I'd done speech and drama as a child, and my mother had sent me to speech and drama. Well, it was elocution classes at the time because I was so shy, and she'd sent me to Irish dancing classes because I turned my toes in. I still turn my toes in, but anyway, I love.
We did not notice that on Dancing with the Stars.
But so I applied and went through a 6-week training course. It was rigorous. It was camera tests. It was writing scripts. It was all sorts of things. And the RTE took it really, really seriously. Like there was a department in RTE at the time called Speech Standards. And there was a head of speech
I remember
standards.
It well.
Do you remember it, Mary?
I remember it well.
It was like going before the headmistress if you went, wasn't it? A non-headmistress, not just a headmistress. So then I got put on a panel and did it part-time for a while. And then I was doing part-time work and teaching. And that continued for a while. When my third child was born, I took a career break and got a little bit more work in RTE, in the newsroom and things like that. And then the Eurovision came along. And, the Eurovision was funny because I applied. Do you remember Linda Martin won in Sweden?
That's right, yes.
And then it came back to Ireland. And it was in Ireland then for 3 years.
Several years.
Yes. And I applied the first year it was back. It was being presented in Mill Street. And I wasn't successful. Fionnuala Sweeney, who was a colleague of mine in the newsroom at the time, did it. The second year I applied and I wasn't successful. It was Jerry Ryan and the late Jerry Ryan and Cynthia Niwaraku. And then the third year I applied and I was successful. Now, my brother tells everybody when we're recounting this story that, Mary, the reason you got it in the third year was they felt sorry for you. They said, will this one ever go away? But it was, it was an
some
important
nerve,
moment.
Mary, to keep applying when you had been rejected.
I know, and it was rejection. Yeah. It did feel, because I felt I've lived in France. I have good Irish. I wanted it, so I just kept going.
And I got it.
And
did it live up to your expectations?
Oh, well, it was absolutely petrifying. It really was. But it was magical. It really was. It was an amazing experience, and not without its little, hiccups along the way. We had a dress rehearsal the day before and the night before, and then on the afternoon there was another one. But on the evening of the Friday dress rehearsal, which was the second, I was bringing in the results, And I went to one particular jury in one particular country. I won't say which one, but by that stage, they'd been there all day, the jury, and the spokesperson for the jury was absolutely trolleyed.
Oh dear.
So drunk. And I said, OK, can we have your votes, please? And started off with such and such a country, 10 votes. I said, no, you can't start with that. Can I bring you back? It went on forever, and everybody was in absolute stitches because I could hear them in my earpiece. The person was replaced the next day.
Oh, that was a fortuitous event, I would say. You couldn't leave somebody like that for live television on the Eurovision.
No, it would be disrespectful of the country and of the Eurovision and everything. But it was an amazing, just to walk down the steps to the wave of support it was the Point Theatre at the time, was very, very uplifting and helpful and supportive.
And was there a whole palaver about the gown you might wear?
Oh, yes.
Who might
I still have it.
design it? You still have
There were two. Richard Lewis designed.
You probably can still get into it, knowing you as well. Yeah.
I have worn it for charity nights where, they have a Eurovision night and the proceeds go to charity. I have. Richard Lewis designed both gowns. They were beautiful. They were made with silk jersey, and they had to have pouches. I had to wear bicycle shorts the night of the Eurovision.
Why?
So that the radio mics, they could put little pouches on the thighs at the back so that it wouldn't ruin the line of the silk jersey with having the bulky microphones on your back or on your waist. Yeah.
So you had... Under that
Black
gorgeous gown now.
Lycra bicycle shorts.
You just ruined it completely for me now.
Three
just
pouches in them.
Yeah. When you're wearing it to events, you don't wear the bicycle shorts
No, I don't have to
anymore.
wear the bicycle. I still have them.
Yeah, you still have them too.
Souvenirs, yeah.
I bet you didn't. Well, you probably, knowing you probably got loads of wear out of them, but actually bicycling. Yeah.
No, the pouches would give it away.
Would they?
The radio
Tell me,
mics.
you've had a long and phenomenal broadcasting career. What would you describe as the highlights of it for you?
There are many, and they are all different. I love being with people. I love talking with people. I've had wonderful opportunities over the years. Like I've made programs in Africa, in India. In fact, my first introduction to the developing world was to cover the funeral of Mother Teresa in Calcutta in 1997.
That was an amazing event.
Yeah, it was.
And that was your first time ever in India?
It was my first time ever outside of Europe. It was very eye-opening, my goodness. At that stage, it's probably far bigger number now. There were 5 million people in that one city living on the streets, not in shelters or shanties or anything like that, on the streets. And I can remember going to the basketball stadium on the morning of the funeral and very early in the morning, obviously, because we had to get set up, seeing the people arising for the day at sunrise. And I still can see this man. He was washing his teeth and the water was coming from the gutter. The water was flowing down the gutter and he was washing his teeth in the gutter. It was lovely also because there were many Hindu people and they had made little cardboard altars with the picture of Mother Teresa on it, and they had lovely incense sticks and they were praying in front of it. It was incredible to see those people and to see the devotion that they had across the board for this woman who was a tough woman, but she looked after the poor.
What was your view of her? Because I think back to a time when a great master of cynicism, God rest him, Christopher Hitchens, did a real job on her. I think it was, I'm pretty sure it was Channel 4 programme. I was involved in Channel 4 at the time, and I remember it was awful. I remember getting letters from my mother saying, how could you do that to that poor old woman who only ever had the one cardigan? What was your view of her, having been in the city at her funeral?
That was my introduction to her, really.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of her. I kind of watched out of the corner of my eye when she was on the Late Late Show talking to Gay Byrne. What I was conscious of, because obviously it was a very long plane journey going over and plenty of time to read up about her. There was no Googling at the time. I had the books with me. All I was conscious of was her sense of focus, and the fact that she was, that the poorest of the poor was her way of doing things. And she, a quote that I remembered always was, don't think about the numbers, just help one person at a time. I know she was a tough cookie. I don't know the circumstances, but all I saw of her was the outpouring of devotion from Christian and non-Christian communities in Calcutta, and the work that she did and that the people who worked with her did for literally the poorest of the poor, the children. I remember going to the railway station at some point, and there were small children on the platform, and I was talking with somebody who was with an NGO there, and the child's legs were very deformed. He was about 8 years of age, so that from the knee it was bent backwards, the two things, and they were just crawling along the platform. And he said, you know, we could take that child in. We have an orthopaedic unit, but the children won't do it because they get more money begging if they have a deformity like that. It's very sad.
I'm thinking too of your own, the depths that are in you as a person of faith and of spirituality, because you've also another aspect of your life is authoring. I don't know how many books have you written now?
Six.
A lot. Six. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a depth to them because they're in pursuit of that spiritual side.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
I don't know really. I don't know. I think probably upbringing. We grew up in a very strict Catholic household. I mean, I wasn't strict with my children, but my idea was to raise good people and to give the values, and I do feel that has happened. I regret now that, and for very good reasons, people have moved away from the church, but nothing seems to have replaced it. There doesn't seem to be a moral code, and I feel very, very sorry for people who grow up that don't have a kind of a structure and an education in what's right and wrong. We always had that. Those things would be important to me. And I suppose from the point of view writing the books, there wouldn't be so much a spirituality that I would be pursuing, more a kind of an honesty and a getting in touch with what's inside, both in my heart, in my mind, in my soul. My sister Deirdre has a wonderful saying. Whenever she meets anybody, she says, how are you in your mind, body and spirit? And that's really it, isn't it? And
that's what you're exploring.
Yeah, I think so. And I was a little bit nervous in the beginning because I actually, the first book arose from the fact that my mother had just died. And I wanted my children, she had minded them when I was teaching. I wanted them to remember her. So I wrote a little pamphlet. It was about 11 pages. In memory of her, and I bound it and I put a little red ribbon on it and I gave it to the four of them. I'm sure they don't still have them. But then I happened to be on the Late Late Show, I don't know why, and we were talking about this, having done this for my children, and a publisher then contacted me and said, would you like to write a book and a memoir? And I was very nervous because, you know, it's a bit like when I went out and did Dancing with the Stars. You really are putting yourself on the precipice. You're going outside your comfort zone and you're leaving yourself open to be commented on, either good or bad. But the way I approached the writing was, okay, I'll do it and I will be honest and I'll engage with my heart and my soul. But if I don't feel I want to send it, I don't have to. That was all. But I've never written anything that I didn't send.
And you mentioned there, you do open yourself up. You do make yourself vulnerable by becoming such a public figure. Mm-hmm. Have there ever been times when things have been said to you or done to you that have really got to you, that have broken your heart?
Well, I remember when my marriage ended, which was in 1997, and that was a terrible, terrible time.
How old was your oldest child then?
Eva was 13.
So you had
and
4
Lucy
children
was
under 13.
6. Yeah.
Oh.
Now they've been very successfully and well co-parented since then, because their dad was living in one house and I was around the corner. But I do remember that when we separated, I did not want the newspapers to know, and managed to keep that the way it was for 3 months. I don't know whether it was just shame or fear of the headlines or whatever. I also firmly believed that I would never work again in RTE. Imagine that in 1997, because times were different then.
Did you think
there was no
thrown
divorce?
out?
I did, yeah. I thought I wouldn't be kind of acceptable in the way that I had been up to that.
And would a man in the same situation have been regarded as unacceptable, or was it a woman?
It was very unusual, really. Yeah. It wasn't very common. And I suppose with the man, maybe it's easier to camouflage or not to be, out front and central with it. But eventually a journalist did, about 3 months later. And it was sickening, it was, because the whole end of a marriage is sickening anything also. It's like looking into a grave, but there's no coffin, there's no corpse. It's a very empty feeling. And, it's a fact of life. It's a long, long time ago. But that was something that was very scary and very frightening. It was also the case that I can remember going, my mother was a great support, always was. But I can remember going out we were in Bewley's in town, me and Mummy, and I wasn't wearing, this was now up to the time it came out, I was wearing my wedding rings. But then when it was out, I took them off. And she did not approve of me taking off my wedding rings.
Why so? Why so?
Because, you're separated, but you are still married.
You're not free?
No. Well, you're still married, and I felt that by wearing them, it was a bit of a fraud. So, we just agreed to disagree.
Tell me how your mum and dad, both of them, was your dad still alive at that time?
No.
So it was just your mum.
Yeah. And it was hard for her because she's trying to be everything. She's trying to be mother and father. She had 2 children still in school. She had wonderful support from her sister and brother-in-law next door. And we were just I was more of a family of 7 than a family of 4 because of 3 cousins next door. We're still friendly. I mean, there was a big party in Clondalkin just before Christmas to celebrate my and my cousin William next door 70th. And the whole of, Clondalkin, cousins, friends, they were all there.
Did that continue and keep in place when you were facing your marriage breakdown? Was that available to you as a big support?
Oh, yes, absolutely, yeah. And I mean, it's happened in the family since then as well, and it's not a big... I think when you're the first to do anything, it's different. And they were. I mean, it was not an easy time. There was no divorce. It was a different time. But, it's life. What doesn't break you makes you stronger, and very nice relationships. And I feel I'm happy that my children, that I've raised good children, and so has their dad raised good children, and they're now adults and their parents, 3 of them themselves.
Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
Work management platforms. Ugh, endless onboarding, IT bottlenecks, admin requests. But what if things were different?
We found love in an open space.
Monday.com is different. No lengthy onboarding. Beautiful reports in minutes. Custom workflows you can build on your own. Easy to use prompt-free AI. Turns out you can love a work management platform. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Did you ever wonder during those years or since, am I going to be able to cope with this? Because you're up there. You're the mortgage payer. You're the person who has to have the job to keep going, not just to keep your own body and soul together, but to keep the kids going as well and through college and jobs.
Yeah.
Did you ever feel, oh my God, I just wish I wasn't entirely alone here?
Well, I wasn't, because those expenses were shared. But obviously, yes, I did have a new mortgage. And I have to say, and I would put it out there as advice, you gave me advice, Mary. We were on the Camino de Santiago. Yeah. We had only just met, and that was in 2008. And you talked about your first house that you and Martin had, and that anytime you got a little bit of money together, you would put it off the mortgage, but you would continue the high payments. And I did that, and I managed to finish my mortgage 9 years early.
We did the same.
Yeah. The thought had never entered my head. If I had a bit of money, I'd say, well, what will I spend this on? But no, and it worked. It's good advice.
It's great advice.
Thank you for it, and I would give it out to anybody who might be listening to this.
Martin's aunt gave us that advice. She's into her 90s now. She gave us that advice, and the result was we didn't go on too many holidays.
Yeah.
We didn't ever go out to big dinners. Neither of us smoked or drank. Now we had a good life. I mean, we weren't frugal.
Yeah.
And we raised our 3 kids, and Martin's dad and all that came to live with us. But exactly that. Any time we had a little bit of extra cash, we'd put it off the mortgage. And I still remember the day sitting we lived upstairs at the time in Rostrevor, and our house was an upside down house. And I can remember the clatter as the postman dropped a big, massive envelope into the hall. And I went down to get it, and I because I suppose the lawyer in me realised that it was a legal document of some sort, and I thought, Mother of the Divine, somebody must be suing us for the house. It was a huge, big, strange, narrow envelope. And so when I opened it and the deeds of the house fell out, I'm going, what the hell are they sending us the deeds of the house for? What? And then the covering letter, which said, your mortgage is now paid off. It wasn't like that we were putting in thousands every month.
Oh, no, not at all.
It was bits and pieces.
Yeah. At that stage, I was freelance. So, if I had continued paying it year by year, I still wouldn't have it finished off. It was to go till I was 72.
You're kidding. Wow.
Yeah. So, that's a relief.
Isn't it, though? Yeah. Particularly when you're freelance. Just talk to me about that, because you worked on RTE up until the age of 65, and then they said, well, that's it now. How did you feel about that?
Well, I wasn't freelance at that stage, because in 2004, when I started presenting nationwide with Michael Ryan, I got a contract. But yes, at 65, it was time to retire.
Whether you liked it or not.
Well, yes, and I don't think it's any secret that I didn't like it.
I didn't like it, yeah.
And was quite vocal about the fact that I didn't want to retire. And they've since extended it, and there are ways in which it can be negotiated. No, I didn't want to do it. 65 is nothing. It's young. I was presenting nationwide, which I absolutely adored working on, and still enjoy watching, and feel that it has a huge value, and provides a great service to Ireland and the community. Sure. People have said to me, people from other countries who've come to live in Ireland, say they look at it, it's absolutely great. It gives an idea of what's going on around the country.
What I love about that programme, and always say about the programme, is God knows there's enough cynicism out there. Yeah. There are enough scalpels out there being taken to people's lives. It doesn't do that.
Absolutely.
Just telling the stories.
A spotlight on different parts of the country.
And giving them the respect that they mightn't otherwise get if there wasn't a programme like that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. But I loved doing it. I did not want to stop doing it, but I I don't know, maybe I just don't have the combative gene. There's no way I was going to fight it. I just...
Except when you're doing quizzes, but I don't know. I just remember a few holiday quizzes where you were pretty combative, but I'm going to leave that.
It's fun. It's a bit of fun. People expect it of me now in the quizzes.
I'm afraid they do. They do, yeah. And you always, in fairness, you always meet their expectations. Yes. We're both now, you're a little bit younger than me, just a little bit. Your perspective on ageing and retirement, do you walk around with a sense of mortality that is different from before?
I don't now, because I had a very strong talking to myself, but just, I suppose, last year when I was approaching my 70th, I was pretty conscious of it in the way that I have grandchildren, and I'd be looking at maybe my 3-year-old granddaughter Holly and saying, okay, now when she's 21, I'm going to be whatever. I won't be here. I will not be here for all of their milestones. I mean, just practically speaking. But I then got through that, and I have realised that that's all the more reason for living in the present and enjoying life and being grateful for what you have and making the most of opportunities. One thing I would say about retiring at 65, I was pretty worried about what was going to be on the other side. Was I going to be sitting at home and doing nothing? But the opportunities that have presented themselves since, which I really couldn't have taken on while I was working full-time in RTE, have been really, really rewarding. I mean, I love doing this podcast, not particularly this episode, but others.
This is the best episode yet.
I can't wait to turn the tables and boot.
Yeah.
But it's been so lovely to do this, you know, to talk to people and to hear their stories and to hear them, you know, just talk from the heart. And also, I suppose, in a nationwide kind of way, I love the fact that I present this programme, which is produced by Enda, our producer, Moving West for TG Carr, which is a kind of a nationwide vibe. It's about people
very similar vibe,
yeah,
yes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
showing the positive side of things.
Yeah, in fact, just talking about that positive side, because you were talking earlier there about, you know, when your marriage broke down, the uncertainty you had that maybe there wouldn't be a place for you in RTE because of your marital status. Do you think, you're a long time in broadcasting, you've been a trailblazer for women in broadcasting. Do you think, are women still held to unfair standards, higher standards than men? Do they get the same crack at the whip? Do they get a fair go?
Well, I think times are very different. I think things have changed. But it's not that long ago that Sharon Violon insisted that she be paid in a respectful way, that she was co-presenting the 6 o'clock news
That's
with
exactly
Brian
right.
Dobson.
Yes.
And Brian was being paid more. So you'd have to say, yes, I have never experienced a situation where I felt I should have got that and I didn't because a man got it. There were a few times that things I would have liked to have gone for and been involved in, but I didn't go for them. And I think that's kind of a legacy of not being married, because you feel you've got to, you know, you can't just not be there when your children are growing up and when they need you. I can remember a very kind boss at the time when I was asked to do nationwide in 2004. I said, how can I do this? You know, children still at school and Eva was just going into college. But he said, look, give it a go and see how you manage with the travel. And if it doesn't work out, just come back and we'll sort something out. That was Noel Curran. He was DG at the time.
Yeah.
But
great guy.
I gave it a go and everybody was very, you know, helpful and supportive. My mother again stepped into the breach. And as I said, they were spending time with their dad as well. So that was very useful. But I also just made a policy of no matter where I was going in the country, be it Donegal or Kerry, I would go very, very early in the morning and I would just come home.
You'd always be back.
You'd always wake up in your own bed, yeah.
And you're the devil for getting up early in the morning and baking them buns, right?
Oh, that was a thing. Yeah, I wanted them to come, because I might have left before they got up. I mean, they were big enough to get themselves out to school. But I would make a batch of fairy cakes and have them coming out of the oven as I was leaving, so that they come downstairs to the smell of buns. And actually, working with crews, then they'd say, you know, I'd just say I'd have done that. and left and made the buns and left them on the table to say, and where's ours? And where's ours? So that was the way. It was grand.
Tell me something. Do you find then that some kind of, you were exercising restraint on yourself, really, weren't you? Yeah. That's where the I feel like the pushback or the pullback was coming from.
Yeah, I was. I spend time once a month with a counsellor, and I actually look forward to the session. Not every time, but I have never not done it. I started going to her when, you know, there were difficulties, whatever they were, and you could have stopped when the problems resolved themselves or whatever, but I decided to stay on, and I found that to be, again, that's a bit of advice I would give people. If you can, and there are many, many community services that provide that now, to have that support when things are good as well as when things are bad, because those are the times when you're not in a crisis mode, and you can actually examine those kind of things like holding yourself back, and why am I holding myself back? I put a lot of it down to being born in the 50s and growing up in the 60s, when you were told, nowadays it's called don't get notions. In those days it was called don't get above yourself, you know? So those are the times when you can explore your own personality, and, you know, maybe you please people too much. Maybe you should be more honest. Maybe you should just be more demanding. I think we're bad at that, this generation of women particularly. And I know that, I mean, it didn't help that my mother was absolutely, first of all, she was thought, would you get a real job? You have a real job? You're a teacher. Why are you doing this? And then when I was asked to present the Eurovision, I went into the kitchen and told her, and her face went the white of that sheet of paper. What
was she frightened of?
She was frightened of two things. One, that I wouldn't be able for it. And it was very demanding and took an awful lot of training. And probably the most thing that she was most frightened of was that I might get a big head, or that I might get above myself. She was, genuinely. That was the way, I mean, she was a generation before me, so she was bound to fall victim to that kind of mentality.
But the world of the arts, the world of whether it's theatre or drama or television, sometimes gets the reputation for producing sort of drama queens, divas. Nobody will ever accuse you of that, ever. But have you met them?
What, haven't we all?
So she's looking straight across at me. Stop that now.
No way. No way, Mary. No, can I say actually that at the beginning, when we started presenting this podcast last year, I was absolutely petrified. I really was, because here was I co-presenting a podcast with a woman with whom I have a very good friendship, but a woman of huge substance, of a brilliant mind, and who's been the president of this country. It felt I felt very kind of overwhelmed for a while. So,
and meanwhile, I was saying, she's done the Eurovision. How am I going to cope?
But there you go. Isn't it important to admit these things, to say them, and to get beyond them?
Sure.
Yes, of course, you meet people who are difficult, but I always feel that when you're presenting something, for me, it's a television program or a broadcast. For actors, it's a play. For film stars, it's a movie. You really are the front person, the visible persona of a whole big team. And that for me with television, that was the joy of television.
That's the best part of television, isn't it?
The crack you would have with the crew.
Yeah.
So I would never, ever, underestimate that. And I can remember way back when myself and Marty were presenting Open House, which was live. I can remember one of the cameramen saying, "Mary, move a little bit, because otherwise there'll be a lampshade growing out of your head," you know. And I said, "Well, thank you so much for letting me know." He says, "Oh, well, it's only because you don't throw your weight around." I said, "There'll be other people now, and that lampshade will be growing horns out of their heads."
Oh yes, they always had their little ways, didn't they? Yeah. I love that expression that Marty had for people who were a bit like that when they were leaving the studio. Do you remember what he used to say? It was, widen the door.
Widen the door,
Widen the doors.
coming out. Widen the door, yeah. He also had a saying, because maybe we got on very well, and still do. I mean, he's a close friend. There was, it was his wife was in a, might as well say it's changed hands several times since, the Coachman's in Swords. It was a pub, and she was having coffee with a friend, and there was nobody knew who she was. And at a table close to her, there were two of them, and they were saying, "Oh yeah, definitely, there's something going on between Marty Whelan and Mary Kennedy." Sure, they couldn't be like that on the on the couch like that. No, definitely, which was absolutely ridiculous. But whenever we'd be doing something like a little close-up thing for Valentine's Day or something like that, it got to the stage where he'd say it on the screen, say, "Oh, this is for the woman in the Coachman's." And you'd have to link arms.
Feed the rumour, why don't you?
Yeah.
You'd laugh at that, would you, rather than be bothered by it?
Totally. No, I wouldn't be bothered by it. No. Sure, it gave them something to talk about. And it wasn't true. I mean, like, it wasn't true. So therefore, why? No. You know, I mean, I just wouldn't allow myself, I wouldn't use the brain power, the energy to worry about things like that people
That's a great way to be able to approach them. Was there anything in the industry, in the broadcasting industry, is there anything about it that surprised you, that really shocked or surprised you?
Well, the diligence and the creativity that I witnessed down through 41 years working in RTE was unbelievable. We are a really creative, innovative race of people. And, I visited maybe a television station abroad, but there wasn't the same, like, friendship once you went in the door, which I think made things easier. Times change, things have changed, and there aren't so many people in the building. But like, you couldn't go from one end of the corridor to the other for many, many years without having a chat with somebody, or shooting the breeze or having a joke. I found that quite surprising, because I suppose I'd come from a school which is businesslike and which is very busy, and you might get 2 minutes to swap your books around before going back to the next class. It was nice. It was a nice, happy, relaxed vibe. Now, there were times when it was hectic, when I was working in the newsroom and you'd be trying to get a story edited because I worked as a sub-editor for a while for the news, and you were looking up at the deadline. But you get a great sense of satisfaction after that. They're hard workers. They still are.
Would you worry that after all the hassle that RTE has been through, particularly over the last year or so, would you worry that might be lost,
well, following the hassle of the last few years, and also COVID, because that came very close after COVID, right. Because the two, like, it was a perfect storm. I would worry that would be lost. That energy is very, very, exhilarating. But I genuinely, and I feel this very deeply, that we are very lucky in this country to have a public service broadcaster which has, a good heart and a good sense of what's right and wrong, and a really a vocation for passing on the information as it is true, and the entertainment as it should be. Look at Morning Ireland; it still gets the huge figures.
It's going to be so much more needed as we are walking blindfolded into the era of completely fake news.
Yeah,
fake everything, fake everything. Yeah. So we need them more than ever.
Really. And I mean, there are other programmes, like Claire Byrne does a fabulous job of analysing what's going on. And then Primetime, yes. I love the fact that they, that they will stand up for what's right and ferret it out until they bring somebody to account.
Still a good career?
Oh yeah, public service broadcasting, I think, is fabulous. I've enjoyed everything that I've done, and continue to.
If there was something you'd change in your life, or the country, or the world, what would that be?
Gosh, this is the question we ask everybody, isn't it?
Yes, including you. And your time will come.
Pass on that. Look, the things that I suppose being very much a home bird and really feeling for this country, I have huge regard for the wonderful work and the great kind of resilience of people in other parts of the world. My goodness, look at the people in Palestine now picking up the pieces and trying to get back to their lives. But for me, I have always been just totally upset by two things in this country. One is homelessness, and one is children waiting for scoliosis operations. I can remember when one of my children was very small, I'll never forget it. There was a kind of a primetime investigates on. It was a Monday evening, 9:30, and it was about children who are on the waiting list for far too long for scoliosis. And there was one little boy, I think it was Limerick, and I can still see the screen. It was him having come in from school, and the cameraman was behind him. He was sitting on the floor in his sitting room in his T-shirt, and he was crying with the pain. And I still find that very hard. I can still see that little 10-year-old boy and the mother and the father, and how deeply upset by it. And I just felt, if you could just hug that little boy, which they did. There was another girl in that documentary who cried every night in bed. And the other thing, the awful thing about the scoliosis is that the quicker the intervention happens, the less intervention has to happen.
Yeah, and the less suffering.
Oh,
the less suffering.
To see a child crying from pain and not being able to stand up, I just found that very
Our future has to be about eliminating the pain of children, whether it is the pain of scoliosis, the pain of illness, but the pain of homelessness.
We have a lot going for us in this country, and with that comes a huge responsibility to do good by the people that we live with.
Do you think we have it in us to get it done?
I think we do deep down. I'm always impressed by the sense of community that you will find in this country, by the sense of advocacy that people, look at the amount of people who volunteer for charitable organisations, who give generously for fundraisers at home and abroad. And everywhere you go in the world where there's need and there are people catering to that need, you will always find Irish people. It used to be the nuns, the priests and the brothers. Now it's the NGOs and the volunteers. I think it's part of our DNA. It's a very valuable part of our DNA. And it's up to us to keep the pressure on the people that we elect to keep those things to the fore. For me, it's the operation on the children with the scoliosis. I'm very lucky to have 4 healthy children, but that does not make me complacent. We have a sense of responsibility.
One of your little grandchilds was not so well. Little Charlotte.
Now, having said that, when she got into hospital, she went straight from the maternity hospital to Crumlin. The care and the love and the support for her mum and dad, Tom and Shona, was second to none.
That gives you comfort.
Yeah.
That's Ireland at its best.
Yeah, it is.
You like to be called? Do you mind being called Granny?
I'm Nana.
Oh, Nana.
I'm Nana.
Same as me. I'm Nana as well. Yeah,
when the eldest was born, Paddy, because Eva was a primary school teacher, and we all love Irish. It started off with Mamo. But Paddy, he was born just as COVID was happening, and he had nobody really except his mum and dad for so long. And he was well able to make himself understood by pointing his finger and saying, ugh. So he was very slow to talk. And Mama was just beyond the pale as far as he was concerned. He just couldn't get the consonants were in the wrong place. So Nana is, yeah.
And do the kids ever have a problem with you when they see you on the television and wonder, can they just go walk behind the television and grab you?
No. But it's funny. Some of them, when there might be something on the radio, maybe a radio ad or a sponsorship of some charity, and they'll recognise the voice very quickly. Yeah. But they don't know if what I present on television is kind of on their screens. Yeah, no, I remember
one of my own grandsons, maybe about 3 or something, when I was on television, just being absolutely baffled as to how I got into the box.
Yeah.
How did I get in there? And more importantly, how was I going to get out of there now? And why hadn't I appeared, from around the back of the machine and in the living room? He just kept walking around, like looking. How do you explain that?
That's like that ad. You know the ad when the old lady is knitting in her sitting room and she's won the lotto. She's knitting away and Daniel O'Donnell is on her television screen singing to her. And the next thing is he walks out from behind the screen because she could afford to get to come into her house, crouch behind the screen, sing and then come out. Yeah. But Daniel would be great for doing those kind of fun things, as we both know.
Yeah, I think you must be a great granny. I don't mean that, a great nana.
I hope to be a great granny at some stage, so I hope I last that long. But
please God, you and me both. Please God, you and me both. So you've had this extraordinary career. You have 4 fabulous children. You have how many grandchildren now?
5.
You have 5 glorious grandchildren. And looking back now, are you happy looking back with the sweep of your life? Are you happy right this minute and looking forward to being happier in the future even again?
When I reflect on my life and I look back, and it's not all happy clappy. There's been struggles, there's been illness, there's been bereavement, but it's all part of what makes me who I am. I have realised from a long time ago that what's really, really important to me is family and friends, and grandchildren. Obviously, they would come in that top of the list with regard to family. But there's a lovely quote that I really try to live by. It's by the French author who wrote Le Petit Prince, The Happy Prince, and it is, there is no hope of joy except in human relations.
So, as always, a very big thank you to our producer, Enda Grace, here at Dundara Television and Media in County Kildare. Also thanks to our researcher, Anne-Marie Staunton, and of course to our wonderful sponsor, the Meadowlands Hotel in beautiful Tralee. Don't forget to subscribe, to comment, to rate Changing Times, wherever you get your podcasts. And so, until the next time, from all of us here in Allenwood, County Kildare, thank you so much for listening. Take care. Slán, slán. Changing Times, the Allenwood Conversations.
Sponsored by the Meadowlands Hotel in Tralee.
The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
If you're a maintenance supervisor for a commercial property, you've had to deal with everything from leaky faucets to flickering light bulbs. But nothing's worse than that ancient boiler that's lived in the building since the day it was built, 50 years ago. It's enough to make anyone lose their cool. That's where Grainger comes in. With industrial-grade products and dependable fast delivery, Grainger can help with any challenge. From worn-out components to everyday necessities. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Renew your health and wellness purpose this new year with The Reset on Alo Moves, a curated weekly program of Pilates, strength, and step goals to kickstart your fitness journey. It's a 30-day week-by-week program, 3 days of Pilates, 2 days of strength, and 8,000 daily steps, plus bonus nutrition tips from Sakara. Plus, for only $99, you get a year's worth of access to Alo Moves, on-demand, full studio experience wherever you are. Get moving today at alomoves.com.